How's it going?
Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you once again on a lovely sun-soaked evening that we can expect to dissipate as time goes by. I apologize in advance. I am a little jittery. I had a tingle with Dot earlier this evening. Well, actually, I just gave her a bath and she didn't like it. And then when she got out, she was like, you know how they get zoomies sometimes? She was in rocket mode. It was ridiculous. And she was like knocking things over and tearing things up. So we had quite the exhausting afternoon. She was napping until a little bit ago. So hopefully she's feeling a little bit less tired. But I am like kind of jittery and I'm not sure why. Maybe I had a little too much caffeine today. We have really interesting stories to cover today. I don't know if you guys saw, I retweeted Andy earlier today because he dived into this BBC article that featured our dear former boss's face prominently on the front and was talking about the attacker in Texas. And I know you guys know which one I'm talking about, even though there were two and both of them were Hispanic males. One of them used a car to attack people. One of them used a gun. They are focusing, of course, on the one with the gun. Although I noticed that the emphasis right now isn't on gun control. It's on painting this picture of the attacker. And we are about to unpack the fascinating coincidences in this particular case. I actually put up a poll on Twitter that I want to refer you guys over to. I said the Texas attacker used Russian socials to post, several legal IDs, plus fresh, huge Nazi ink, the kind artists often refuse to do. The sparse social media account was immediately uncovered by the CIA-affiliated investigative journalists at the organization Bellingcat. And I'm taking a poll right now. I said, which part of this is the most unbelievable? This isn't even the worst part. The BBC article covertly kind of accuses Tim of causing this, which is fascinating. I'm really interested in seeing what he does with this information. I asked people if the Russian social media, because we all know Russians are very, very bad, the legal ID images, who in their right mind posts a picture of their legal ID on any website. Like, here's a picture of my driver's license. Do with this information what you will. He posted a plane ticket. We're going to read it, so I won't spoil it yet. He posted pictures, and I'm told these are pictures of him, although it's impossible to tell because his face is not included in these pictures. Again, strangely convenient, of huge, brand new Nazi tattoos. Like, the symbolism was full on, unmistakable, shiny new, covered in that greasy stuff they put on it to help it heal. What really blew my mind the most and was like, wow, they're really getting lazy about this, was that the CIA-affiliated organization Bellingcat, we're going to look at an article about them, made the discovery. They were actually the ones who also made the discovery about that leaker back in April, the 21-year-old guy who leaked plans from Ukraine. Really, really interesting how they're getting all these interesting scoops lately, especially angled against the right. Andy says, tonight is our southern border being invaded by Mexican Nazis. Always asking the good questions. Thank you, dear. Andy is in the chat, even though he is currently out of town for work. But people seem to think that the Bellingcat discovery is the most unbelievable. Everyone wants the all the above option. Not offering that because I want to know which part of it is the most unbelievable. It strikes me this is just getting kind of sloppy, but let's read what the BBC had to say about it and watch how the mainstream media is working hand in hand with our lovely, esteemed three-letter agencies. Andy tweets, why all the conspiracy theories? They found his passport 2 blocks from the World Trade Center. Here he is referring to a conspiracy that started around the September attacks in 2001, where they said that they found a passport from a gentleman who was supposedly one of the actual attackers. I looked this up. Snopes tells me that it's unconfirmed. Who knows? I don't remember where this came from exactly. Maybe Andy can tell us more in the chat. But let's continue. Obviously true and not at all weird. He's just a typical Mexican Nazi who loved Tim Pool and Tucker Carlson. And I will add here, he also loved Libs of TikTok, who is an Orthodox Jew, and he signed his emails with the double H. You guys know what I'm talking about. This was a greeting used in historic Germany in the 40s. And posted signed letters of intent to do mass attacks on a Russian forum. Wow. Okay, so he says, I mean, come on, guys. If this was a deep state conspiracy, why did he post pictures of ammunition, maps, a plane ticket, 3 forms of ID, and his mother's maiden name? Check and mate, conspiracy theorists. So here he posts a screenshot from the BBC. How do we know the account was his? You know that's going to be the first question, right? If you go to an obscure Russian social media site and you find this guy's supposed account, everyone's going to be like, that's not really him. Duh. How do you prove it? So, of course, he made it easy for us. He, and by he, I mean the CIA and or Bellingcat, but I repeat myself. The BBC has examined the material and we can be confident the suspect was the person behind the posts. How, you ask? Garcia appeared to use the account on a social network popular in Russia, Russia bad, as an online diary. He posted multiple documents, including his name, date of birth, and other identifying details, including a plane ticket, a speeding ticket, and an ID card. Isn't that convenient? I hope you can hear the sarcasm dripping in my voice. Photos on the account also show a distinct tattoo on his hand, which matches a graphic video of his body taken at the scene of the attack. The shooter also posted images of the mall and its location on Google Maps, including the time the mall had the highest number of visitors weeks in advance. So, okay, well, let me finish reading this and then I'll talk about how he should have probably been on someone's effing radar. In addition, open source investigators, would that be CIA-backed Bellingcat? Let's read on. Found a YouTube channel with a video showing him taking off a mask. So they saw his face. Material on the channel was also posted on the Russian social media account. And then the last thing that Andy cut off, unfortunately, says, who's spreading false rumors? And I will tell you right now, it is the BBC. And I have to refer you back to this picture that they chose for this article. It is a picture of our former boss's face when he was about 18 or 19 years old. And I just have to stop and say here that I really hope if and when I'm ever in the unfortunate position that they decide to smear me, they do choose to use a picture of me from when I was much younger, but I digress. Andy goes on, definitely under no circumstances would I ever imply, quote, without evidence that this sentence was added after the fact by lawyers. So here we see the sentence he thinks is added by a lawyer, and I'm inclined to agree. There is no evidence that the attacker was inspired to action by Mr. Poole's podcasts, which cover right-wing talking points and conspiracy theories. Ooh, like Tucker Carlson's conspiracy theories, like CNN was just telling us. But Mr. Poole immediately tried to cast doubt on the veracity of the material, accusing those digging up the material as being part of a psyop. Mr. Poole did not respond to requests for comment, nor should he. Jeez, crazy. Yes, Giga Chad Andy, great journalistic work from my husband, who is not even really a journalist, although I would call him a citizen journalist at this point, because this is important stuff. I hadn't really dug into this BBC article. I just saw the tweet where they were picturing Tim's face and talking about this Texas attack, and I was like, it's insane that they are subtly implicating Tim in this attack. That's absolutely literal, actual libel, from my understanding of the definition of libel. Although, let's look this up. Define libel. Published false statement damaging to a person's reputation, written defamation. That's kind of what this reads like, isn't it? We'll see. We'll see what happens. Nothing may come of this, but this is wild to me. So we have a couple different things going on here, right? First of all, we have all of the questions I'm asking here in my poll. Which is the most unbelievable? The fact that they used Russian. Russia's the enemy. Remember, we don't like Russia. We're at war with Russia and Ukraine. The fact that he posted pictures and legally identifiable personal information on this Russian, again, our enemy, social media platform, his gigantic incredibly problematic tattoos that I will tell you, first and foremost, you guys know I have ink. I've gotten ink in the past. It's been a really fun part of my life. I got it after I lost a bunch of weight. Don't care what you think about it. I try not to show it too much because I try to keep it professionally covered. I asked the artist at the time, who was also Hispanic, ironically enough, I said, hey, do you know what would happen if somebody walked in here and asked for a really, really objectionable tattoo? And he said, I wouldn't give it to him. And I was like, okay. And he's like, actually, lots of other tattoo artists wouldn't either. Now, I wasn't able to find an article talking about whether or not tattoo artists generally refuse to make this kind of ink. But I'm pretty sure that it's not a common thing, although technically you could argue that it is a First Amendment issue and that you should be allowed to get such ink if you so choose. You just might be very hard pressed to find an artist willing to do it for you. Finally, yes, I think the Bellingcat discovery is really just the cherry on top since they are closely affiliated with the... Andy says, please don't call me a journalist. I will sue you for libel. You're the one, Andy, who said that anyone could be a journalist. Technically, I'm a journalist since I blather about news every evening. We'll see what happens. You're welcome to try to sue me for libel, but I think the word you're looking for is slander or defamation. Since it's not written, it's spoken. Libel is a written defamation. So, check and mate, legalese friend. Really, really interesting case. I just think it's so funny. I'm so grateful that we have all of this information so immediately after this attack in Texas when, for example, we still don't have the manifesto from Nashville. I'm just saying, a little bit weird, isn't it, that when it fits the proper narrative, you get the equivalent of a manifesto immediately. But it seems like they've moved on from manifestos a little bit. They have all this other stuff they're trying to play with. So let's see where they go from here. I'm honestly just curious, but I do want to show you guys before we move on. Bellingcat actually does have an affiliation, or they have camaraderie with the CIA. So let's read this article a little bit. Bellingcat funded by U.S. and U.K. intelligence contractors that aided extremists in Syria. Supposedly, quote, independent website Bellingcat raked in money from scandal-ridden Western intelligence firms that wreaked havoc and massive profits in Syria. How strange. Would these be the same organizations that actually go out of their way to make sure that not only are they not monitoring actual shooters in the US, but apparently going out of their way to kind of plant these images and these links and all this other stuff? Maybe they were coaching the guy. Maybe the guy actually did this and they have plausible deniability by just saying, well, we didn't do it. He did it. Oh, well, yeah, we were coaching him to do it. We told him it would be fine. We actually told him that we would protect him from being shot by the cops if it came down to it. But no, he actually did it. So they have the technicality, which is something that they really love and something that the mainstream media loves as well. They love the technicality. Andy and I were talking about this the other day because he said technically correct, the best kind of correct, which is a quote from Futurama. And I said, that is not at all the best kind of correct. The best kind of correct is contextually correct that contains all the technicalities, all the surrounding evidence. The best kind of correct is fully correct and honestly in pursuit of truth. But let's continue. Since its launch in July 2014, the self-styled open source investigations website Bellingcat has cemented itself as a darling of mainstream Western media. Why is that? Have you guys heard of an independent, journalistic organization that is a darling of mainstream media? I haven't. I can tell you right now that timcast.com is not a darling of Western mainstream media. And I can't imagine why not. Why do you guys think that Bellingcat would be a darling of mainstream media? Interesting question. We may never know the answer. With its dives into alleged Syrian government chemical weapon attacks and Russian intelligence, right? They don't like Russia, remember? Interesting, then, that they find this on a Russian forum. Isn't that wild? I am doing a little bit of conspiracy theorizing here, but I will tell you that all of the stuff that I listed, everything in my tweet, that's all true. This is on a Russian social media account site. There were several key points of legal identification on that account. Very sparse, by the way, not a lot of followers, not a lot of reach, but it was Russian, and that's the main thing. The tattoos, also part of it. Images presented by Bellingcat, who I was startled to learn had me blocked on Twitter when I went to look up what they had to say. So interesting. I guess they don't really want information to get out. And finally, the sparse social media immediately discovered by Bellingcat. Wow, they're really good at their jobs, right? So good. I am so impressed. Let's continue. Russian intelligence operations showered with praise, puff pieces, and glitzy awards. Isn't that strange? While vehemently insisting that it is independent of government influence, Bellingcat is funded by both the U.S. government's National Endowment for Democracy and the European Union. CIA officials have declared their love for Bellingcat, and there are unambiguous signs that the outlet has partnered closely with London and Washington to further the pair's imperial objectives. Now that the media consortium has obtained access to high-tech satellites capable of capturing 50-centimeter resolution imagery of any place on Earth, it is time to place these connections under the microscope. And honestly, good for the gray zone for doing this. Let's look at this. These war profiteering firms have in turn provided direct support to Al-Qaeda allied jihadist groups in Syria, the same elements that have provided Bellingcat with evidence to convict Damascus in absentia on all manner of dubious charges. So here we have income from these companies: Sandstorm CV, Adam Smith International, Zinc Network, Chemonics International, other companies. Income from governments. The EU, we don't have any income, but we had a 50,000 budget. Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Interesting. Actuals versus budget. Fascinating. Bellingcat does not accept direct government funding. It only accepts contributions from international or intergovernmental institutions like the EU, OSCE, or the UN. So this looks like the Bellingcat people saying, actually, we don't take money from the CIA, but that sounds like an awfully thin defense of exactly what they're doing. Journalist and academic Alan McLeod has exposed in detail Bellingcat's deep and cohering ties to Western national security state. The supposedly open source operation has employed a staggering number of former military and intelligence operatives, deploying them to reinforce imperial narratives while reaping sponsorship from an array of governments and quasi-governmental bodies. Let's see what their summary is. This is kind of a long article. See what we can find. Excuse me. Pardon me, I have hiccups. I don't know. I've been getting hiccups and gastric upset quite a lot lately. I apologize. There are, however, indications that the wheels are coming off the Bellingcat bus. I wish. On August 9th, the European Press Prize announced that it was retracting the laureate status bestowed on now former Bellingcat staffer Daniel Romain for his work geolocating images related to child abuse in Eastern Europe due to numerous substantiated complaints. Perhaps the day will come when Elliot Higgins and company outlive their usefulness to Western intelligence agencies. Well, we happen to know that today and the last few days are certainly not that day for Bellingcat, and I just want you all to be aware of this about this organization. They are a threat, I would say, to democracy, and not the democracy they always talk about, but the kind that actually matters to keeping the world safe and prosperous, the kind that makes free markets possible, the kinds that make capitalism very important. And he says, yes, I will call you a journalist, dear. Retweet this tweet too. Okay, so this is the tweet where he was making these statements. Yes, so caught a lot of attention, definitely, as deserved, I think, for finding that little scoop of information inside that BBC article. Well, we know the BBC is not unbiased. That's pretty clear. The problem here isn't the BBC. We're going to talk about the NBC foibles in a little bit because they said a few different things that are really, really incriminating. But I think that what we can take away from this is that not only is this stuff false flag territory, it's getting really lazy, like really, really sloppy. And it's honestly kind of embarrassing, but fun to watch, I have to admit. It feels like they think they're in a movie and they think they're going to get away with it. Now, I will say that the FBI did just refuse to disclose, let's see here, Joe Biden's accuser. Let's see if I can find this real fast. Oh, this is going to fly up. Biden's accuser refuses. Okay. FBI file links Joe Biden to criminal scheme per whistleblower. Right, and then this should be from today. Doesn't look like I can find it. Yeah, so I don't have anything from today. I saw something about it go by on the Twitter. Let's sort by the date. Past hour? Yeah, I've got nothing. Okay, cool. Well, I just wondered if I could pull something about that up because it's very, very clear at this point. Remember, we just read the other day about how the DHS is making this educational material about how to spy on your neighbors and how to de-radicalize people who are, for example, suffering from the extreme affliction of being like pro-life and for questioning the government and asking questions about, like, I don't know, everyone's favorite island owner and his connections to our government. Just saying, lots and lots of questions, but they will tell you that the government is on your side. They are looking out for you. They have absolutely nothing but your best interest at heart. Let me read this one article or this one tweet from Greg Price real fast if I have it. Greg. All right, so we know Greg. We love Greg. We had an interview with him the other day. Journalist posting his L's. Yes, common. Very, very common trend. Let me go to my profile because I retweeted him because he was saying really interesting things about Bellingcat, and I'll use that to close off this conversation about that. That BBC article was really something else, and it's kind of rare that you'll see such a clear, like, kind of psyop being carried out in real time. It's fascinating to watch. So Manifesto was no longer good enough for them. They had to go all in. They did all the stuff. Greg tweets, a guy who works for Bellingcat, literally works hand in glove with the CIA, yes, as we now know based on that article, wants us to believe that a Mexican guy who just committed an attack posted to a Russian social media site no one's ever heard of about being a Nazi and being expired by Orthodox Jew, my addition, libs of TikTok, and random Timcast episodes and doesn't even know if it's actually him. This is the biggest deep state psyop I have ever seen in my life. And I will pause as Homer does in The Simpsons and say, this is the biggest deep state psyop I've ever seen in my life so far, because I'm willing to bet that if this succeeds and if no one like Greg holds them accountable, there will just be more down the road. And I wish to hell that Tucker Carlson were on Fox right now, because you know that he would be dismantling it from the ground up. But Tucker Carlson is the topic of our next discussion here. Let me read some of your chats first. We will get into it. Tucker Carlson and NBC really have it going on, and the Daily Wire has a great article about it. Andy. Freshly unpacked Nazi flags probably as well, for sure. Two Ladies says it's the push from the WEF in my opinion. Not sure exactly what you're referring to. Also says, I gave you all a big like. Thank you very much. Zach asks the question, is Tim Pool responsible? Well, if you look at the framing of the BBC article, you could be forgiven for thinking that he was actually the attacker in Texas when this happened. Absolutely nuts. But of course, they carefully chose the picture and then carefully framed it so that it wasn't actually accusing him of all this stuff. They know what they're doing. They have lawyers, but we'll see. Two Ladies says, I might have to get Twitter active again. Yes, my poll on the channel tonight is, do you use Twitter / would you watch a live stream from me on it? 58% said yes, 14% said no, that's fine, you don't have to have Twitter, you don't have to necessarily want to watch me. 27% said maybe. I will say, if you're not on Twitter and you love free speech, you are missing out, because Elon is causing all sorts of chaos over there and really pushing this free speech stuff. So you know what? Let's hop right over to this conversation about free speech. Daily Wire reports, NBC correspondent worries that Twitter won't police Tucker. It's just a free-for-all. Oh my gosh. Okay, Virginia, let's read. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello worried on Tuesday that no one would be able to police former Fox News host Tucker Carlson if his show aired on Twitter. Oh my gosh, a fate worse than death. Costello brought in ousted CNN anchor and regular Fox News critic Brian Stelter to discuss the situation. I heard this on the Daily Wire, one of their shows, and I thought it was Brian Stelter, and I was like, nah, he's not on CNN anymore. We can't escape him, apparently. Responding to Carlson's announcement that he planned to bring in a similar version of his popular show to Twitter in the near future. And Alex says, NBC's reaction to Tucker Carlson's Twitter show announcement, will anybody be able to police what Carlson says, or is this the point? It's just a free-for-all. Yes, Tom Costello of NBC, it is, in fact, a free speech free-for-all, and no one will be policing anyone's speech over there. In fact, they actually just revoked their correct naming policy that they had for a while there, where if you used the name that someone was given at their birth by their parents instead of the name that they picked as a delusional adult or child, you would be removed from their platform. And everyone, of course, lost their minds over this. But it just goes to show that Twitter actually cares about actual free speech. For example, Eric Swalwell earlier today made some silly tweet about Trump being a convicted sex offender. He's not convicted. The case was civil, and he got a community notes on it, which I love to see. I love to see political officials being held accountable for the lies they tell, because have you guys ever seen a situation in which a politician was called out on their lies immediately or very shortly after telling them in front of the same number of people who first saw the lie? Because what we see sometimes is that mainstream media will post articles that are so clearly false, but, and they know this, everybody will read that, they'll get upset about it perhaps, or they'll share it, and then if and when they do decide to go back and correct the lie or the error that they had in the original article, they just talk about it a bunch later and no one ever notices. They never notice the retraction. They never notice the correction. And what's happening on Twitter is that people aren't being able to get away with without community notes when they tell lies. And I, for one, am a huge fan of it. You will not find that kind of free speech anywhere else. I cannot do anything like that on Instagram. I can't say anything like that on Facebook. In fact, some guy just got a strike on Facebook for saying that Joe Biden was not able to just overrule Congress. They said that this was hate speech for some reason. Absolutely bonkers. So if you want free speech, if you're not on Twitter, what the heck are you doing? Seriously, the best place right now. But let's go on. NBC has more pearls to clutch. Twitter was already under fire for misinformation, disinformation, all-out lies, anti-Semitism, racism before Elon Musk took over. And now it's gotten kind of crazy, right? Seemingly unmoored, if you will, Costello began. Pivoting to a direct question, Costello asked, will anybody be able to police what Carlson says? Or is this the point? Stelter quickly agreed that having no rules appeared to be the point, saying it is a free-for-all. It's what Elon Musk wants to provide. Yes, he likes free speech and he likes people to be able to say whatever they want. This move by Tucker may cement the idea of Twitter as a right-wing website, and we will see some users trying to go off to other sites instead. Okay, goodbye. If you don't like the idea of truth, if you don't like the concept of free speech, get off Twitter. Go away, seriously. Because if you are on Twitter trying to censor other people, you don't have a right to do that. Sorry. It is in fact a free speech platform. If you don't like what someone says, you have a block feature, you have a mute feature. There's a lot that you can do. In his Tuesday announcement, Carlson said that he wanted to take his show to Twitter because he believed it to be one of the few places free speech was truly allowed and even valued, and because Twitter as a platform did not take political sides. Twitter owner Elon Musk revealed after Carlson's announcement that he had not been a part of any signed deal with ousted Fox News host, but in the hours that followed, he reached out to former CNN anchor Don Lemon, who was fired by his own network the same day Fox announced Carlson's departure, and suggested he come to Twitter as well. Have you considered doing your show on this platform? Maybe worth a try. Audience is much bigger, Musk tweeted in response to Lemon's April 24th tweet announcing his termination. Yeah, here he is in response. How interesting. So it sounds like Elon is trying to keep a balanced approach by talking to Don Lemon as well as Tucker Carlson, or hastily going in and saying, you know, Tucker Carlson, we haven't signed any kind of deal. Now, here's the deal with Tucker Carlson's position with Fox. Right now, he's technically still in a contract with them. He's literally basically being paid to do nothing, which is apparently a thing that happens relatively often. Ben Shapiro was talking about this. He's both a lawyer and he is part of a company that hires people just like Tucker Carlson. And he definitely made a hint that the Daily Wire had reached out to Tucker Carlson about joining them, which I would absolutely love to see. But he pointed out that sometimes networks will pay their commentators to not say anything. And the timing is so interesting to me because Fox had him in a contract until early 2025, which would take us right through the 2024 election, which as far as I can tell, which is exactly what Fox planned to do. They wanted to take Tucker out for the election so that his commentary wouldn't persuade voters. And I have to say that is the lowest shot. That's the lowest blow. That's the slimiest thing I can basically think of. That's really disgusting. They see how powerful he is. They see how persuasive he is. And they say, oh, you know what he shouldn't ever be able to do? Affect an election. Except he should be able to. He should have free speech. He should be able to do whatever he wants to do. And now, from my understanding as well, Tucker Carlson's lawyers are accusing Fox of violating their own contract, which is going to get really interesting. I'm sure that Tucker is going to go to court with Fox. That's going to be really cool too. Looking forward to seeing that. Here is how popular Tucker Carlson still is. Tucker Carlson's tweet announcing new Twitter show tops 100 million views. A tweet from former Fox News host Tucker Carlson announcing plans to launch a new show on Twitter is racking up tens of millions of views online. His tweet captioned, "We're back," amassed 100 million views in less than 24 hours, and the 3-minute video netted 21 million watches in the same time frame. During his short message, Carlson did not address his ouster from Fox, but he offered critique of the news media more generally, saying amazingly that as of tonight, there aren't many platforms left that allow free speech, and lauding Twitter as a place where our national conversation has long incubated and developed. The former primetime host did not provide any further details on the new venture he was planning. That's right. Yes. So, very interesting news from Tucker. Very curious what happens with him moving forward. I'm going to close that article. Yeah. Zach says, so Joe Biden can't rule over Congress. I guess not. He's not actually a king. It turns out that we have like 3 separate branches of government for a reason. Keenan says, I hate when I accidentally pocket mod, muting and banning users because I can't turn the screen off. I know. It is very annoying. Zach's crazy. The crazy idea that Biden needs to talk to Congress to begin with. That's right, Greg. It is a crazy idea. Taz says, awesome, Lydia, love the channel. Missed you on Timcast. You were awesome on there. Oh, thank you very much for joining us over here. We try to do this before Timcast IRL so you can still engage with both shows. Randy Simmons says, Tucker for Prez. I would be very pleased to vote for Tucker for president. Unfortunately, I get the impression that he's too good a man to ever want to run for public office. Many such cases, unfortunately. The people who are willing to run for office are not the kind of people you want in power, which seems like a little bit of a flaw in the system, but who knows? Well, okay, so you guys know, and we're going to wrap up after this because I need to go take care of the puppy, and I am very much wired and tired at the same time, so we'll wrap it up here. I want to show you guys this video from Roz Alerts. Heavy gunfire erupts at the Far Reynosa International Bridge on the U.S.-Mexico border. You guys know that tomorrow Title 42 ends. Title 42 was the only thing, the last remaining thing kind of holding back illegal immigration on the southern border of the U.S. Now it's going to be gone. And we have 700,000 people lined up on the American border ready to come in. Let's listen to this if we can. I'm sure it's going to be dramatic. Well, that's absolutely horrifying. I hadn't actually listened to that thus far, but that to me sounds exactly like Mexico coming to the U.S. And I'm really afraid that's exactly what's going to happen. So I have a few trusted sources down on the southern border. We have Julio, and then we have Jorge. Yep, Jorge Ventura. He's been down there for quite a while. One of my favorites is Bill Malugan, who works with Fox in LA. So he tweeted about this in December. He said a huge migrant caravan of over 1,000 people crossed illegally into El Paso last night, making it the largest single group we've ever seen. So this is from back in December. Today, we are facing possibly 700 times that number of migrants getting ready to cross the border. And let's see how things are looking down there. Title 42 is still in effect, by the way, until tomorrow. San Diego Border Patrol is reportedly 150% over capacity, and they are looking at 6 times the normal amount of people seeking asylum. All of this before Title II has even expired. We cannot handle this onslaught without help from the federal government. So this is a supervisor, Jim Desmond, District 5, San Diego County Supervisor. Wow, things are sounding serious down in San Diego. Ron DeSantis, Florida is now the largest state in the union to make E-Verify mandatory for employment. E-Verify is one of the ways that you can check that the person you're hiring is actually a legal resident of the United States, to which I have to say, good for them. Looking across the river at Matamoros, Mexico from Brownsville, Texas, crowds of migrants continue to gather with the intention of crossing illegally into the U.S. The two men in the green are Mexican immigration officials. Wow, this is just a vast number of people. Absolutely unbelievable. It's just a crowd of humanity, and they expect to come to the U.S. because of Joe Biden. In fact, I am distinctly reminded of a man who was looking at trying to cross the border, and somebody asked him, "Why are you coming here?" And he said, "Joe Biden." Basically, his reasoning was, Trump's gone. It's time to get up there. This is my chance. I'm going to go while the getting's good. And you guys know that they bring these people in and they try to process them, and they say, okay, you can go. We're not going to hold you, but you have to come back. How many of those people do you think ever go back for immigration hearings? If you guessed 0, that would be largely correct. I'm sure that number is very nearly what actually is happening down there. Absolutely wild to me. Breaking from Matamoros, Biden DHS coordinating illegal immigration inflows with Mexico. Let's take a look at this. I saw this go by and have a chance to read it. A striking level of collusion as Biden's officers use an encrypted online chat room to tell Mexico when to let migrants swim across. You guys, the Biden administration wants Mexican nationals to take the place of Americans. And I don't really feel shy about saying that, because you cannot read this and give me any other impression. In recent days, large crowds of immigrants have formed on the Mexican side of the Rio Grande, fully prepared to swim over well-worn crossing spots to Brownsville, but seemingly held back by unarmed Mexican immigration officials. Over the course of several recent days in this northeastern Mexican city, where perhaps 3,000 immigrants a day swim over to Brownsville with no opposition on either side, a curious pattern became evident. At some sort of signal from the U.S., the Mexican immigration officials, a group of about 100 to 150 from the crowd, would suddenly stand in unison and rush to the riverbank, past the immigration officers, and swim to the U.S. It turns out this pattern was far from happenstance. The Center for Immigration Studies asked several of the Mexican immigration officers what was going on, and learned that President Joe Biden's Department of Homeland Security has been coordinating these mass swims with Mexico's Immigration Service, INM, at high levels on an encrypted WhatsApp channel. Wow, there you have it. The Biden administration actively working with illegal migrants and other governments to help get foreign nationals into the United States. If Republicans don't win in 2024, I literally don't know what's going to happen to this country, because this cannot continue. If you don't care, if you don't take illegal immigration seriously, like Florida is doing, the Mexican president just called Florida immoral for their new immigration law. If you don't have that kind of pushback from this foreign government, you are not doing right by American citizens. You cannot allow illegal immigration to continue. And the fact that the Biden administration is not just allowing, but enabling this to happen should tell you pretty much everything you need to know about how they've been talking. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term, the browning of America. This is a term that the left likes to use on the right. They like to accuse us of being terrified of this happening. They point to statistics about white people not really reaching replacement rate with birth rates. And they say, you guys are so scared. You guys are going to disappear. There aren't going to be any more white people in the U.S. What's wrong with you? But then in the same breath, they will turn around and say things like, this is such a conspiracy theory. Why are you so racist? No one is saying this. It's truly, truly inspirational to watch them spin it. They truly want foreign nationals to come and take the place of the stubborn, right-leaning, conservative Americans so that they can continue to push their ideologies down on the country. And I have to say, it's working. It's working. And if Republicans don't win in 2024, they will have won. The Democrats will have won this battle. The U.S. will be entirely a northern state of Mexico, which is not really that much of an exaggeration even right now. So if we allow 10,000 immigrants a day, which is what they're expecting after Title 42 is lifted, to come across the U.S. border illegally, then we will be looking at unprecedented numbers of people in the U.S. We will be looking at significant percentages of the U.S. population becoming Mexican nationals. Now, if you're fine with that, fine. I personally have no issue with people being able to get a tan. Doesn't really matter, but I want to live in a country with people who believe that the country has purpose and has a meaning and who care about the founding fathers and the things that this country was founded on, like independence, individual liberty, individual freedom, the importance of, like being able to protect yourself and your property. The Biden administration wants nothing to do with that. The Biden administration has much more in common with Mexican nationals than they do with right-leaning Americans, and they could not be more excited to actively replace those people with immigrants. And again, I have nothing against immigrants who want a better life. I have nothing against immigrants who think, I would really like a better life. Here's a chance to get there by doing basically nothing, just breaking one little rule. It's no big deal. But at the same time, we know the cartel exists. That's exactly what that video from Roz Alert sounded like. That sounded like a cartel battle on the U.S.-Mexico border, and I expect much more of it going forward. In fact, reports came out about that it was the Mexican army exchanging fire with Mexican nationals, which to me just sounds like cartel warfare, because we know for a fact that the cartel is in the Mexican government, like hard in the Mexican government, at least in the police departments of every single city in Mexico. I mean, every city. There's a reason the cartel has guns when Mexico itself has only one gun store in the entire country that's heavily guarded by government forces. This is incredibly disturbing, and I'm really, really nervous about what's going to happen tomorrow and beyond. I'm glad that we don't live this close to the border, but to anyone who does live down there, I'm really concerned for you. I hope you guys strap up and stay safe, because this is going to get dicey and wild. And I need to share this article on Twitter. So go ahead and go over and follow me on Twitter if you're not already, because I'm going to be sharing some of these articles. I just shared the Bellingcat article about them being affiliated with the CIA. And now I'm going to share this one, which I hadn't heard of before. I was researching before tonight's show. Really interesting. I'm going to type, let's see, what should I say here? I'm going to say something inflammatory. Borderline treasonous behavior. Oh, I can't spell. Never can. Yes. They are working hand in hand with foreign nationals against the interest of their own country, which they were technically sworn to serve, protect, and defend. The people in the Biden administration took oaths that said that they would put the interests of this country above others. And that is not what they're doing here. Absolutely wild to me. Josie says, Potatoes is pro-human trafficking because why not, man? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Keenan says, Politics 101 is blaming your enemy for your crimes. Yes, it's also a tactic from Rules for Radical. Convincing Reality says, glad to see you're doing well, Lids. Appreciate your perspective on current matters. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy to see some new faces in the chat tonight. We have a wonderful chat. You will enjoy it. Thank you for joining us as you guys are getting ready to go over to Timcast IRL. I genuinely can't believe, I'm very cynical, right? Andy gives me a hard time for it sometimes because he's so very good-hearted about the state of human nature and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, no, people are terrible. They will use any excuse to be as terrible as humanly possible. Reading this about the Biden DHS coordinating illegal immigration inflows with Mexico is just I thought that I had reached my limit for cynicism about how awful things could get as far as the American government is concerned. And no, apparently that limit cannot be reached. This is over 9,000, as they say. Keenan says there's about to be a breaking point where there's too many and the same policies in Mexico will be in America, and it won't be a benefit to cross the border. Yeah, so that would be, I don't know if you guys have studied chemistry, but there is a point at which you have an equal dispersal of different concentrations of solutes and solutions. I don't remember the terms exactly, but if you have a highly saline solution on one side of a membranous or a porous barrier, and on the other side you have a low saline concentration solution, you will reach a point where the solution's concentration are the same on either side. And this is what Keenan's talking about. When you hit a point where the policies in the US are the same as the policies in Mexico, and the life results and the life expectancy and the amount of danger that individual people face is the same on either side of the border, then, and maybe only then, will we see an end to illegal migration, because people are coming from Mexico because objectively, compared to the United States, Mexico is much, much worse. For example, they only have one gun store. But here's the thing. If Democrats are able to push through with this ridiculous illegal immigration and they've reached the point where they are able to functionally get rid of the Second Amendment, the United States might also have only one gun store moving forward, which would make us on the same level as Mexico and probably similarly ruled by the cartel. How many of those people, of the ostensibly 700,000 people waiting to cross over the border as soon as Title 42 is over, do you think are members of the cartel? Because we also know, this isn't something that I have talked about before, but we know that people are flying directly from other countries to come to the southern U.S. border to cross into the United States. This is Chinese nationals. This is actual terrorists from Al-Qaeda and from other places in the Middle East. This is a very serious threat, and the Biden administration is coordinating these inflows. And I just have to say, kind of feels like the end of the world as far as immigration is concerned. And I will say too, I have nothing against people who come here legally. I've actually worked with a lot of immigrants from the Philippines when I was first working as a nurse aide, and then I graduated and I was working with immigrants from Nigeria and Kenya. All of them were fantastic, incredibly hard workers. They cared about pursuing the American dream. They cared so much. They worked their tails off. They went through the whole complicated, obnoxious immigration policy procedures, and they came here legally because they thought it was the right thing to do in their pursuit of the American dream. These people are not those people. These people are not willing to go through the correct procedures, and they don't have to. They're not even required to. These people can be criminals. These people can traffic humans. These people can traffic drugs. It's easy for them to do. They are not the high quality kind of person you want to be working alongside. Indian migrants, Nigerian migrants, incredible high levels of education, very, very focused on making the American dream happen. They also have really high levels of income because when they come to the US, they're like, holy cow, look at all this possibility. I might as well make the most of it. So they do, just because they did have to work so hard to get into the US. And this kind of rolls into, and then I'm going to wrap up here, my theory that you have to go through hard times to become the kind of better, stronger person. And I constantly refer to a lot of my heroes having survived actual concentration camps. Like these are people like Viktor Frankl and Solzhenitsyn and Corrie ten Boom, people who then went on to do amazing things despite the incredible difficulties that they'd faced when they were younger. And it made them stronger. It made them better people. It made them care more about what people believed and thought and the things that people had done to create the problem of concentration camps. But the people coming into our country right now are not being faced with such difficulty. They are flowing across the border, and we're just letting them. And not only are we letting them, we're coordinating their inflows. And I just have to say, disturbing. Two Ladies says, I've followed the border issue for years now. Good. Yeah, it's very important. Very important. Zach says, first world country USA and third world country Mexico will equalize into something in between for both of them. Yes, I'm afraid that's exactly what will happen. Keenan Smith says, yes, definitely give it a like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Two Ladies says, most migrants are not Mexican. They are from Central and South America. Yes, that's an issue as well. Keenan says, ever seen a dam being breached? Yes, it's going to be exactly like that. Except for crime, more for us, less for them. Yes, we are equalizing the distribution of, for example, cartel violence across the border. That's really exciting. I feel worse for people who live in Texas. It's going to be really, really hard for them. At least many of them are armed. Matthew says diffuse. St. Miles says equilibrium. Yes, equilibrium. Correct. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure exactly what the chemical term is. I wish I knew. I think it might be equilibrium. Chemical diffusion of solutions across membrane. Let's see if we can find it just because I want to know before we close. Yes, we have diffusion. Solutes can be transported across the plasma membrane through a variety of methods. Okay, so we're looking at actual cells. That's not what we want. We just want like the picture of the, there we go. That's it. Yep. Diffusion and osmosis. Yeah. Okay. So in diffusion, it's the movement of molecules from high concentration to low concentration. Both solute and solvent move. Yes. Well, in this instance, only the solute would be moving because the American population is solvent, because the solvent is that into which the solute is dissolved. Although I do recall always getting those confused. So please don't hold me to that. That was just the interesting parallel that I was thinking of as I was looking at the ridiculous tidal wave about to crash on our southern border. Like, this is unbelievably concerning and everyone should be worried about it. Absolutely wild to me. Anyway, Oscar had evidence of UN paying for buses and cards to aid these migrants to reach the U.S. border. That doesn't surprise me at all. Keenan says, whenever I notice and show an example, then I get police officers to threaten me with BS charges. We're giving money for Border Patrol to catch. They put on military bases and delivered. Good. Biden administration actually deployed something like 1,500 Border Patrol agents to try to slow this a little bit. It doesn't matter. It's not going to matter. This has been going on for the entire time Biden's been in office, and Biden literally had to promise as he was dispatching these troops, these Border Patrol agents, that they weren't actually going to enforce the law. They were just going down there to do paperwork and make sure that people could get into the country safely. It's very concerning. It really is. Keenan says if a mother comes with 2 children, they are given at least $10,000. Really interesting. I don't know if that's true or not. I'd have to look up a source on that. He adds, at government-issued credit cards, they're actually credit unions for the military. I pay attention. Interesting. Working with cartels, billion-dollar industry. Indeed it is. Two Ladies adds, this is planned. Yes. I forget where I was. No, I remember exactly where I was when I realized that the reason we had started to allow illegal migration in the numbers that we did was so that we could have, for example, workers, and so that the Democrats could have voters. And that kind of blew my mind. Like, I literally remember where I was. I was outside. I was on the sidewalk. I had just gotten done walking the dog. And I was like, wait a second. This is why they're letting this happen. Holy cow. And that has always stayed with me, and it's becoming increasingly clear. And I feel like a lot of people realized that before me, but at the same time, I was only like 17 when I figured it out. So I would like a little bit of credit. I'd only been thinking about politics for 6 years at that point, and I'd already reached that understanding. So guys, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I am beat. I'm going to go take care of the puppy. I'm going to take her outside to run around one more time because she is wild. If you guys don't follow us over at Instagram.com/the Lighter, Leiter, dips, the Lighter dips, DIPS. You are missing out because I post videos of Dip and Dot constantly, and of Andy, who's also similarly adorable. So go over there and check it out if you don't already. If you don't follow me on Twitter, I am Sour Patch Lids. On Instagram, I am at Real Sour Patch Lids. Make sure you follow us because I don't know what platform is going to be best moving forward. We will see what YouTube does with this particular video and all of our conversation about controversial chats tonight. So we'll see what happens with that. Thank you guys again for joining. I will see you all tomorrow. Until next time. Bye, guys. How's it going?